Alrighty, good morning, seventh graders. Now, so if you're watching this, you're more than likely a virtual student or a student that is absent in class. We are doing our iLearn testing today in school, so we have a different schedule. Alright, so we are going to revisit simple interest that you were supposed to do last Friday. Now, if you did the notes last Friday, you might be able to skip a few minutes of this because I'm going to review those at first. Okay, so this was our objective. I will solve problems with simple interest. Okay, we already know how to use proportion to solve percent problems, convert between fraction, decimals, and percents, which we will need to be able to do today. Okay, so this is going to go into your textbook. Okay, the ones that you did Friday was page 61. Okay, so to set up, making sure I'm at the right page? Yep, I'm at the right page. Full screen. When we do our proportions, we normally have our percent always over 100 and then our part over our whole, right? So for this one, our percent over 100 is basically just our rate. And if I wanted to move my principal to the other side, I multiply both sides. So this is where we end up with interest equals principal times rate. But then because we need to know how long, that's why time is brought in. Okay, because a lot of times you're not going to pay off the loan in 1 year. So that's where the interest is put on annually. Okay, so if you're wondering why we use this, it is coming all from what we've already known how to do. We just changed the way it looked. Just like you come to school every day, but you might look different because you wear different clothes. All right, so let's review what interest is. Okay, so interest is equal to the principal, which is the amount deposited or invested or borrowed, times the rate, which is the annual interest rate, and time in years. Remember, your percent has to be turned into a decimal to be able to multiply. And then we have to also make sure if it's given in months, we put it in years. Okay, so that's where the I equals PRT comes from. All right, so here's our first problem. We have find the simple interest earned in a savings account where $136 is deposited for 2 years if the interest rate is 7.5%. So what I like to do is come through and label what is what. So this means it was deposited, so that's my principal. This says 2 years, so that's got to be my time. And it says the rate, and it's in a percent, so that's my R. Then I can go ahead and figure out, well, how am I going to put this in to the formula? Okay, so I first put it down like this. But like I said, we cannot really multiply with a percent. We have to turn it into a rational number of a decimal. So that's where, remember, if you have a percent and you want to turn it into a decimal, you divide by 100. Dividing by 100 just makes that place value change of where the decimal is. Okay, so that's how I know I can basically take 2 hops because I'm dividing by 100. Then we multiply it out, and you give us $20.40. So, which isn't a bad. It's a low interest rate. All right, so we have find the simple interest for $600 invested at 8.5%. Okay, so we have our principal, our rate, our time, but this is written as months. So if you notice, I went ahead and did, how many months are there in here? 6/12. I reduced it to get a half. Now, I could put a half right here instead of the decimal version. I would just have to use parentheses in my decimals. But if you know your common fractions as decimals, that is very helpful. So I take your 600, turned my rate into a decimal of 85 thousandths times 5 tenths, which is a half. Multiply it out, and you get $25.50 after 6 months. Let's review Friday's last word problem. Louis is taking out a car loan for $5,000. If he pays off the car loan in 2 years, at the end of 12 years, Louis will have to pay $300 in interest. What is the simple interest rate? So this time we're looking for the rate. We already have our I. So we're going to have to do some algebraic skills here. So first set up your equation. So my I went here. I tried to color code for you. Principal. I'm looking for my rate, and then I have 2 years. I still put it in the same order. Now I can combine these two numbers by multiplying. Remember your multiplication and commutative property. You can switch the order if it's all multiplication. So that made 10,000. So 300 equals 10,000 R. Divide by 10,000 on both sides to get this to cancel out. And you get R equals 300. So that's a decimal, not a percent. So to remember, to turn it into a percent, you multiply by your 100. That will move my decimal over the two place values to give me R equals 3%. Okay, if you need to pause this, get your notes finished up. Okay, so let's look at homework that you were supposed to do Friday. Okay, so here's some answer key. Ones I know some kids had made mistakes on was this should have been times a half. This one, you should have had 8 over 12, which then equals 2/3. Okay, it sure looks like a 3 for you. This one, make sure you use 3.5. This one, again, you needed to use a half. All right. So in 1 month, that meant 1 out of 12. So this is what your answer was. 7.5% because you're looking for the rate. 5% for the rate. Yes for 5,208. You getting ready to leave it? All right, so let's look at the next page. So you needed to subtract the 2 and get 8 and 7. 78. You know it was 6 to 9 months. And then I don't think you had to do all these, maybe, possibly. All right, so like I said, this is how we got starting with proportions from the beginning of the chapter and slowly turning it into multiplication. All right, so let's review again. What do each of these letters represent? We have interest. Oops. We have interest, principal, something that's deposited or invested, rate, and time. Remember, turn it into a decimal. Make sure you got the amount of years. And then you notice that there is 10 problems. I'm not doing all of them with you. Some of these you're going to have to do yourself. All right, so how much interest will Hannah earn in 4 years if she deposits 360 at 6.5%? So we have to use that information. So I equals, and they already told us how much. So that's how I know I'm looking at my I. We have 630 times, turn into a decimal, 0.065 times 4. And then you can just put that straight into the calculator as it is. Just make sure you double check that you're typing it correctly. I've seen kids rush and make little errors that they didn't put it in correctly. So I equals 163.80. So for with money, always make sure you have something in the penny spot. Okay, so then you're going to have to do 2. Mr. Pound has earned $410,000 in retirement accounts. He earns 3 and 8,500 simple interest for each year. Find the amount earned after 6 months. Okay, so we are looking for interest of a large amount of retirement. Everybody wants to look forward to retirement. This is a bigger decimal than most because we got 3 digits there and we had to add a couple zeros. And 6 months. That's your half. Okay, so make sure you put the right amount of zeros in your calculator. And we get a whopping, in 6 months, he's already got 7,892.50. Okay. Then you'll do 4. All right, Mona opened a savings account with a $500 deposit and simple interest rate of 5 6/10%. If there are no deposits or withdrawals made, because sometimes we have savings accounts, sometimes you have to dip into it. How much money was in the account after 8.5 years? So, how much money is in the account? So that way that one is worded tells me that we have to find the interest rate and add it to our $500. And that will give us our total. All right, so we got, make sure you always read all the directions. And times our 8.5. So 500. So you got like a big Christmas money from grandma. And you're like, I'm going to put it in savings for when I want to buy my car. In 8.5 years. Okay, so I equals 238. So that's what we're going to add to our $500. So we have a total of $738. Not a lot, right? That's why you always should be putting money into your savings account. All right, watch that. And number 6 is the same thing. How much is in the account? All right, number 7, Kelly's inheritance from her great grandmother was $220,000 after taxes. If Kelly Ray invests this money into a savings account and earns in simple interest every year, what is the interest rate on her account? So this time we're looking for rate. So whatever rate is, we got to fill it in. Okay. All right. So we know our interest. How much did she make every year? Was 18,260. How much did she deposit? Was 220,000. That's a comma, not a decimal. And how many years? Every year. So we are just looking for 1. So then, because that's a 1, it pretty much is going to cancel each other out. So now we're just going to divide both sides by 220,000. So R equals, oops, I put a decimal. I didn't need the decimal. All right, 0.083. Now, is that a percent? Nope. Multiply it by 100 to move that decimal over twice, and we get 8 3/10% is our rate. That's your answer. Alrighty, last one for me helping you. All right, Apollo invests 53,700 at a rate of 5%. How many years will it take to earn 18,769? So here we're looking for time. Okay, we know our interest is the 1879. All right, so then we just gotta multiply these two. All right, so 18,700 equals, and then these two multiplied. If you already skipped ahead, that's fine. If you're trying to do some of it on your own and checking with me. All right, and now does that make sense that this got smaller? Yes, because we multiplied by a small decimal. Okay, always double check, make sure your answers make sense. You know how we had that Whopper question on our quiz last week? I had some kids telling me that they were paying like $400 for a Whopper. I'm like, does that make sense? We've had time to go back and recheck it. Okay, so $18,795 divided by $2,685. I got 7. So what is that in time? All right, so we would say 7 years. Okay. Make sure you read each question, you find out where all your information is going, and then you will do great on this. All right, have a great day.